Hey everyone, welcome back to the Keep Health Alive podcast, where our guest today is Michael Weinberger. Michael is a prominent speaker with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, has been published on HuffingtonPost.com, and has become an advocate for those suffering from bipolar disorder and other mental health conditions. It's very exciting for me to have him here today. So, Michael, welcome to the show. How's your day going?
Great, Justin. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Now, on your app, A Plan for Living, which we'll talk about as we go on today, it asks you at the start of each day, how happy are you? So what's Michael Weinberger's happiness level today?
So, fortunately, I'd probably say it's around a 7.
Nice.
I recently experienced a physical injury. I tore my hamstring. And so I was definitely waking up at like a 2 or a 3. But kind of as the day goes on, life gets better. And so right now I'm probably at a 6 or 7.
Oh, man. That makes me wonder, would you rather feel a torn hamstring or like some of the emotional pains that come with ups and downs?
I'm actually torn on that because, I think both are treatable. Right. Both are solvable. But sometimes it's nice just to have brain pains, if I can call them that.
Right.
Because at least I could bend over and put on my own shoes and put on my own pants.
Right. Interesting. I would almost go with I'd rather have physical pain. But yeah, no, that's great. And as we'll talk about today, you've been very willing to feel the full spectrum of emotions. So that's awesome. Okay. Now, some people's lives, if I have an idea, they seem to look like a straight line, or maybe like a modest bell curve peaking somewhere along the way, or maybe the Scooby-Doo roller coaster at the kids' theme park. Then there are people where, and your story resonates a lot with me, so there are people like you and me who maybe have something that looks like the scariest roller coaster at the park. A lot of ups and downs. So I'd love to share your story with listeners so they can get to know some of the things you've gone through in life. So what does Michael Weinberger's story look like so far?
Absolutely. So I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 1994 at the age of 17. So I've been dealing with it for 22 years. I believe based on my early childhood, I've probably been dealing with it for my entire life. But I didn't start getting treatment and a diagnosis until I was 17.
Right.
And at 17, I was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. And so they put me on the traditional treatments for ADD, which, as many of you know, are stimulants.
Yep.
And giving stimulants to someone that has very extreme manic episodes is the last thing I needed to help in my treatment plan.
It just kind of pushed you into the mania?
It just made things terrible.
Right.
Instead of helping quiet my mind and helping me focus, it simply made me stay up longer. It gave me this insatiable need to be moving at all times. I started getting speeding tickets every other week because I just couldn't slow down.
Right.
My brain was really most comfortable when I was driving 100 miles an hour,
Yep.
rather than, sitting still in a classroom.
Yeah.
When they finally came back and gave me a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, I actually have bipolar disorder type 1, which is the diagnosis where I deal with more manic-related issues than depression.
Right.
Probably the cool bipolar disorder. Right? Because if you're going to get some sort of illness, you might as well get a manic-based illness.
Right.
And I can tell you, it is exhausting to deal with mania on a daily basis. Because what I guess you're never told is mania is not only extreme ups and happiness and grandiosity. It's also irritability, rage, impulse control problems. All those kind of negative connotations of not being hopeless is what mania is all about for me.
Yep.
At that point, I was asked to leave high school. They basically allowed me to come in for the 2 classes I needed to take in order to get a high school diploma, and they sent me home the rest of the time.
Hmm.
And as school went on, my mother continued to give me mental health days because we were just happy that I was moving forward. And one of my big principles is it's really progress, not perfection. And sometimes progress is really small and slow, and that's absolutely okay.
Yep.
I ended up getting into college. I went to 4 universities. 2 of them asked me to leave because of drinking problems and behavior issues. I never was asked to leave because of performance. I was always a very, very good student. I just didn't have the ability to sit still and listen to the lectures and go to the classes and do what everyone else was conforming to. For me, conformity didn't make sense, and I really, without being medicated, I was told I listen to the world at 100 miles an hour. Well, the world is only speaking to me at 10 miles an hour.
Right.
So if you could appreciate a conversation with someone that's speaking 10 times less than you're listening, it kind of sounds like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is just impossible to communicate with people when you're already at the end of the conversation and moving on to the next one.
Right. And do you find that your mind is kind of filling in the gaps with whatever noise is in there?
Absolutely. Not only is it filling in the gaps, it's actually filling in the entire conversation. So it's making up the ends of conversations that may or may not be real in order for me to move on to the next thing.
Interesting.
So while I'm really good at school because I'm able to draw conclusions, some of my interpersonal relationships weren't the best because the conclusions aren't always the logical ones that school presents.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so you can't always anticipate what your mother's going to say or your girlfriend's going to say or your friends are going to say. But sometimes you just can't. It's like you're itching to move on to the next topic already.
Right.
I actually, even being with a great medication regime and my own app right now, I suffer with the same thing watching, some reality TV or watching the news and all the politics. It's just, I'm hearing the same thing in slow motion, and it's like a big trigger for me. So I find that, I spend more time doing things that aren't triggering, like watching reality shows of how they build houses, because I'm fascinated and it keeps my mind engaged.
Those are the best. That should actually be a form of therapy, is just watching HGTV all night, because it's just like a different stimulus than everything else.
That's right. And you can't, I feel like I don't get aggravated by watching a house get renovated. So, I watch those types of shows or the Animal Planet or whatever, just so I'm not irritating myself.
Right.
Ultimately, after I went to 4 colleges. I finally graduated with a degree, and I got a job with a large corporation. And within 6 months of working there, I went to my manager and I said, I think I'm going to need you to double my salary in order for me to stay. And, they weren't interested in doubling. So I started working for a company in Manhattan where not only was I able to double, I tripled my salary.
Wow.
However, I kind of got connected with a company that took advantage of my diagnosis. I was unmedicated, I was self-medicating, and my mind was racing. And I was motivated by making money. And so we took advantage of that. And I probably worked 18 to 20-hour days every day of the week.
Wow.
I needed so little sleep because I wasn't taking any medication. My mind was always racing, so I could always keep engaging.
Yep.
And it just didn't stop. And so during a manic episode, towards the end of my career there, I bought my first house. I was 23 years old and I bought a house. And 2 weeks after buying my first house, I quit my job and decided I was going to start my own company. And that first company failed. It failed with as much grandiosity as it could fail.
Failed with flying colors.
Right. It is a success story in failure. It's the how-to of not to succeed as an entrepreneur.
Perfect.
And, it's kind of like couple, grandiosity and mania with an inability to conform and kind of an out of touch with reality and see what happens.
Right.
Right? It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I needed to move on to my next thing. I found a new project, and I ended up moving from New Jersey to Michigan. And, my personality was one of just do whatever you got to do to get things done. Going back to the how happy are you? I believe you just have to constantly be making progress and moving forward. And so I moved to Michigan, and I don't really tell my family. And I'm here for like 4 months, and every weekend they're inviting me for dinner and this and that, and I'm just too busy to tell them.
Right.
And finally, I'm like, hey, guys, I moved to Michigan. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, actually, I have a Michigan license. I live in the state of Michigan now. And
now, what was the reason for not telling them, if you look back?
It was probably, my mind's racing. It wasn't part of the story I was telling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wasn't being belligerent.
Right.
I was literally too busy doing whatever I was doing to notice the world around me.
Interesting.
And so one of the issues I deal with is that when I'm not medicated, when I'm at the height of my own illness, I kind of disconnect from reality, or I make up my own reality.
So there's a big distortion in that state.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I believe that, I can accomplish and do anything. Mm-hmm. Not to say I don't have that feeling when I'm managed, but it's extreme.
Right.
Right. Back in college, I lived with a guy, and I would leave on a Monday and come home on a Thursday. And he'd be like, where have you been? And I'm like, I don't know. I just left yesterday. He's like, you left 3 days ago.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I must have been doing something. But like I said, I was always better doing something, and I wouldn't mind getting in the car and driving 4 or 5 hours and turning around and driving back just to keep myself occupied.
Right.
I lived in the state of New Jersey, which is about the size of 4 football fields. And I drove about 50,000 miles a year around the state.
Right.
So, I was high-fiving family every 4 to 5 hours because I was just going in circles.
Interesting.
I moved to Michigan. I met a girl, and in 3 months I got engaged.
Right.
I then got married 1 year to the day of moving there, despite many signs that this was not the right thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up getting divorced 3.5 years later. And I was introduced to 12-step recovery for food addiction. I had done 12-step for AA, and I'm not really an alcoholic. I have a big impulse control issue. Mm-hmm. So it could be alcohol today, it could be food, it could be whatever.
Yep.
But I ultimately got involved in Overeaters Anonymous. And I went to the doctor during this initial phase of moving to Michigan. And he says to me, if you don't lose 100 pounds, you're going to be dead in 2 to 3 years. And at this time, I'm 26, 27 years old. And I think to myself, shit, that seems pretty serious.
Yep.
So I start going to meetings, and in 6 months, I lose 155 pounds.
And I've heard you talk before that you said you almost became manic about, I think, the weight loss, right? And even the meetings, like you almost did everything double and triple time. Is that kind of accurate?
That's right. And my approach to life has always been if one pill is good, 10 pills must be phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? If one 12-step meeting is good, then 2 must be fantastic. And there's a saying, do 90 and 90. 90 meetings in 90 days.
Yep.
And I was like, well, why don't I do 180 meetings in 90 days?
Right.
Because why not?
Mm-hmm.
And after 6 months, I go back to my doctor and I'm like, Doc, I lost 155 pounds. What's next?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And he just kind of stares at me in this kind of uncomfortable silence. And he's like, I've treated thousands of patients and no one's ever come back. Like, what do you mean you lost 155 pounds in 6 months? Like you said, lose 100. 155 seemed like a good number. So what's the next step? And he's like, well, why don't we maintain this weight loss for 2-3 years, and then we'll look at how your skin's recovering, and then maybe we'll do some skin surgery to kind of clean up all the loose skin.
Right.
So I booked surgery for 3 months from that day, and had surgery. And so at this point, I'd maintained my weight loss for 3 months and had massive surgery to take out 7 kidney to kidney, 7 inches high of abdominal stomach skin.
Wow.
to put me back in place.
Wow.
And I had the surgery. It took 6 weeks to recover. And within 2 years, I'd gained 100 pounds. And so, again, really following this manic mentality of not appreciating consequences or not believing that I can't fix something. Yep. I would just go out and do, right? Why wait 2 years if you could do it now? And so I've dealt with food addiction in my life. I ended up getting divorced and ultimately meeting my wife, who I met in Overeaters Anonymous. She's also in recovery. And we've been married now 5 years. We've been together 8.5, and we have 2 kids. And during this time, we've been through lots of ups and downs together. Yep. When I first met her, I literally went into crisis, and I met her in 2008. And I was overdosing for half of 2008, going into 2009. And in April 13th of 2009, the reason I remember it is it's my birthday. And I vividly remember sitting in my bedroom. I'm sitting on my bed. I'm in tears. I'm talking to my psychologist, and he's just trying to step me down from where I'm at, right? He's helping me to down regulate. And I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And at noon, on my birthday, I overdosed on Ativan. And, my psychologist says, well, I guess I have to call the police. Are you home with anyone? I said, I'm home with my girlfriend at the time. And, I walked over and handed her the phone in tears, and my psychologist said, you got to take me to the hospital. Right. And, I was hospitalized for 10 days, trying to get my medications regulated. And actually after 7 days, they sent me home. And I got home 7 days later, and I was so panicked from coming out of the safety of the hospital. Right. That I looked around my house for about an hour, and I'm like, you got to take me back to the hospital. I'm like, because I'm not going to live if we don't go back. And she took me back, and I stayed for another 3 days. And we had more of a plan the next time. And I came home and I was having weekly meetings with a therapist, weekly meetings with a psychiatrist to really get me over the hump. One of the things I like to share with my story is that during all of this, I was a business owner. I owned my own house. I had my own social life. I didn't lose my business. My partner helped me through this. I lost 40% of my company in 2009. But from when I now reflect back on where I'm at today, my company has grown 30% a year, every year on average, including 2009.
Right.
I'm with my wife. We got married after that event. She stayed with me. And she now helps me with my medication routine. And I'm now 100% medication compliant.
Right.
And I'm now, I was and I continue to be a successful entrepreneur. I'm now a husband and a father. I'm back on track with my food addiction. This year alone, I've lost about 60 pounds. And I'm moving in the right direction. So the one thing I really like to get across to people is, there is always hope.
Yeah.
This too shall pass. Bad feelings pass as quickly as good ones. And I've learned over the course of my recovery that I just have to wait it out.
Yep.
And I have to take active steps to wait it out. But I remind myself regularly through journaling and through other techniques that I've had this feeling before. It's like I recognize this terrible emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to just watch it come through.
Right. Well, thank you for being so honest. You sound very strong. Your wife sounds very strong. And I think these are topics that have a lot of stigma. And I think they're things that a lot of us shove into the world of secrecy. We don't tell anyone. And this just becomes our little dark place that we all feel horrible about. And it's really brave of you to share this. So thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned when we were talking before the show today that you were hospitalized last year, and that you haven't talked too much about that up to this point. So, what brought that about? What did that look like? Was it different and not as extreme as the 2009 one? How did that look?
Absolutely, and actually, to clarify, I was actually able to make it through my 2015 crisis without a hospitalization.
Oh, great. Okay.
And so one of the things I'll talk about when I refer to a plan for living, which is an app that I built,
yep.
The model of recovery that I used helped me keep the wheels on the bus.
Yep.
I might have tried to get off the bus while it was moving, but, the bus stayed together.
Right.
And so last year in April, my online pharmacy filled the wrong script. And so instead of taking 300 milligrams of a medication I was taking 150 milligrams.
Right.
However, it was still only one pill.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just trusted what was sent to me, and I continued taking the pill. I knew something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Right? The world was starting to irritate me. I started to get a lot of paranoid thinking. I started to focus on hopelessness and not surviving and not being around. I became very tearful and hysterical and argumentative and rageful. And I went, my wife and I went on vacation in July for our 4th wedding anniversary and her birthday. And we came home and we went to Florida. We come home from Florida. And that day we got home, I knew something was off.
Right.
And I go to my therapist and I see my psychiatrist and I said, something's not right. I don't know. We got to fix this. And he says, well, let's bump the medication up to 450 milligrams.
Mm.
And I come home and I said, to my wife, let's bump it to 450. And she looks at the script. She says, you're only at 150.
Oh man.
Are you sure we're going to double the dose or triple the dose? And I call the doc and he's like, well, you've been self-reporting 300. My scripts here show 300. What's happening?
Mm.
And so I said, well, the pharmacy sent me this, and that's what I've been taking.
Yeah.
And so my doctor says, well, let's increase it immediately. And he gives me another medication to take. And he says, here's a script. It'll be $25 a month for you to take this medication.
Okay.
I said, well, fantastic. Another $25. I'll go take this medication. And I bring it to the pharmacy, and it's $2,000.
Wow.
And now, mind you, I have a high deductible insurance plan. Between my premium and my high deductible, I pay about $16,000 or $17,000 out of pocket before I start receiving benefits from health insurance.
Jeez. Okay.
And so now I'm going to pay $17,000 plus another $2,000
Mm-hmm.
because it's a tier 3 drug or whatever, and it's not deemed a necessity.
Right.
And so my doctor has some samples for me. I start taking some samples, and Blue Cross Blue Shield, he sent in a letter to get me to get this overridden, to say it's not an elective medication, and Blue Cross Blue Shield doesn't approve me or loses the paperwork or whatever happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in my doctor's office. He's on the phone with the pharmacy yelling at them. They are not helping him at all. And I called the CEO. And I called the office of the president, and I said to them, it's Michael Weinberger. I'd like to speak to the president. And they said, does he know why you're calling? I said, well, he's about to find out. And the woman on the phone says, well, if there's a customer service issue, this is how you handle it. I said, well, actually, this is the information I need. I need to know the exact address that my attorney should contact for a wrongful death claim, because I'm going to kill myself right now, and I want to know where I should send my wife after this phone call.
Wow.
And she says, hold on a minute, sir. And she transfers me to the office of the president, and the most amazing woman picks up the phone. And she verifies who I am, and she says, and she hears my entire story, and I tell her about the suicide, and she says, may I put you on hold for a minute? Absolutely. She puts me on hold. I come off hold, and she says, you've been approved for the medication.
Mm. Right.
It will be $30 a month for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And I said to her, I know. I said, but what's embarrassing and shameful is that I had to call you at this level to get this resolved. I said, because I want to know how many other people that have my diagnosis that don't have the personality or wherewithal or self-commitment to solve this problem.
Right.
Where are they? Are they just going into poverty because they're paying $2,000?
Yeah. Most of the people who need it don't have the resources to do what you did. Yeah.
Right. And so I said, it's embarrassing that this is what it took. And she said, well, sir, she says, may I call you later? I said, yeah. And I'll tell you, at 5 o'clock that night, my phone rang, and it was the lady from Blue Cross. And the only redeeming part of the entire experience with Blue Cross was that she said, I just wanted to make sure you were doing all right.
Wow.
She said, I wanted to check on you. And I'll tell you something, it meant the world to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was shameful that it got to that level. However, there are people that care out there.
Yeah.
And the important message is, do not give up. You know, you are worth life. You are worth living, and solutions are everywhere.
Yeah. And yeah, you know what? I think sometimes the heart of the world has been lost with how disconnected we are. But, you know, what that story proves and you found there is that once you actually connect with someone, the heart is there, the compassion is there.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Um,
And
go ahead.
I hit my lowest point was August 31st.
Mm.
I have a text message to a buddy that says if I didn't have kids, I would kill myself tonight.
Mm.
And I'm just so grateful for my friends and for my network and for my app and for my recovery that I knew that action was a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yep.
That wasn't solving my problem. And I read recently a quote that suicide is simply passing your pain on to someone else. And it really hit home with me that I was not solving my problem if I took my life. I was making everyone that knew me and loved me and cared for me that much worse off.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I share that story with people that I know. There's not a single person that I've not encountered that hasn't said to me, even if they've only known me a few minutes, I'm glad you didn't do that.
Yep. Yeah.
That's what I feel people need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Stay alive, survive, and even if I don't know you, I'm glad you didn't choose that solution.
Yep. I'm glad you didn't. Also, you're here helping a lot of people. Yeah, you just mentioned your app, and there's your website, A Plan for Living, and yeah, it's a great idea. I've checked it out, and definitely want to tell people about it. So, tell us a little bit about your app, Plan for Living, and what it aims to do.
Sure. So I created A Plan for Living. It's an app that really embraces my own personal methodology and model of success, in that I have what I call the happiness formula. It is gratitude plus spirituality plus mindfulness equals awareness, and awareness equals happiness.
Right.
The app is all about starting your day off by asking yourself a simple question: how happy are you? And once you ask yourself that question, there's a wizard that walks you through. Once you establish a happiness level, you start to fill out your gratitude list.
Yep.
And at first, people might struggle and they might not be grateful for anything. The app encourages you and supports you in your journey of finding what you're grateful for.
Right.
And I'm now grateful for things that are actually negatives in my life. I had a verbally and emotionally abusive father. He's on my gratitude list, because rather than keeping it as a negative and weighing me down and wearing it on my shoulders, he's taught me how not to treat people.
Mm.
That's a blessing. I've gotten divorced. I'm grateful, because I wouldn't have my current relationship. I wouldn't have my current experiences and my current beautiful children if I stayed where I was. I've lost companies. I've started over. I've lost everything. I have on my gratitude list every day second chances.
Mm.
Therapists say to me, Michael, I've never seen anyone leave their feet as frequently as you do. But it's those experiences that allow me to appreciate what I have. I used to have a lot of envy and coveting and self-talk and I can't think of the word, paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone else seemed to have things so good, right? No one has any problems. I'm the only one with problems.
Right.
Right? How many of us think like that, right?
A lot.
Right? I'm the only one that has problems. What I learned in my program is I'm actually the only one that thinks about me as often as I do.
Right.
No one thinks about me, and that's fine. But by creating my gratitude list, I'm able to refocus and rewire my brain for positivity.
Yep.
I then take the next step, which is spirituality. And spirituality I could describe in one of two ways. My definition of it is anything that happens in the universe that I can't explain.
Yeah.
That's spirituality for me. And if you're challenging whether you're spiritual or not, for any of us who have tried to lose weight, how many of us have eaten poorly for a long time and go to the doctor, and before they get on the scale, they just have a quiet conversation in their head like, please let this number be good. Please don't let this number go up from last year's physical.
Right.
My first question is, who are you talking to? Right? You're talking to the universe. You're asking the universe to deliver something for you. That's fantastic. It happens the same as on payday. How many of us get paid and then go look at our bank accounts and hope there's more money there, or hope we haven't spent as much? Right? Anytime we ask for something, God, please just help me. Some people might say God. Others might just say, please. Whatever that moment is, that's spirituality. And for me, the spirituality is the humbling of my soul.
Ooh, nice.
It's finding true humility. It's being able to say, you know what? I don't know how to solve all these problems. I don't even want to be in charge of all these problems.
Right.
So you know what? God, if that's the word I choose to use, can you help my friend out with his divorce? And can you help my friend out with his surgery? And can you help my clients out, help them be happy and successful? And can you help my father be less ornery? Right? Why should I have to worry about all those people? Let me just ask the universe for help. And then let me ask the universe for my own willingness to follow my own inspiration. Right? Ask for humility. Ask for me to be present in every conversation I have. Well, now, if I take that spirituality component every day, it's almost like try not smiling after you've just asked the world to help all of your friends.
Yeah.
And you just thank the world for everything you have. Right there. It's almost like I can't even say that without smiling a little bit.
Yep.
Like, I feel relieved just knowing that list exists.
Yeah, right on. Now it's interesting. When you talk about the humility, I think that is a huge part of us. Like, we can often pretend to be shameless or pretend to be righteous if we don't believe in some sort of higher power. I mean, how many of us will kind of go off the rails with a certain behavior, but if we have someone we really look up to, we have to watch ourselves around that person, we're going to be on our best behavior. Well, if we can connect with something much bigger than us, that humility can actually really keep us from getting out of control with certain behaviors.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly. The best thing that ever happened to my marriage is me apologizing. The best thing that's ever happened to my wife in our relationship is her. Apologizing is not weakness. Apologizing is strength.
Yep.
Right? It's kind of like, if you take the example of a barking dog, if all you do is bark, no one comes near you.
Right.
What dogs get pet? Those that are smiling and wagging their tail. So let me just forgive the world and all of a sudden be open to the world.
Right.
My wife and I we were escalating an argument last week because I tore my hamstring and we were going to go on vacation, which we did. And she thought maybe we shouldn't go. And then she was frustrated. And rather than escalating it and turning it into a miserable vacation, we talked about it. And she expressed that she's frustrated. I expressed that I'm in excruciating pain and also frustrated.
Yeah.
I didn't have to be right. She didn't have to be right. We just had to share. And then we had to say, well, what's the next step, right? And they say in program, we don't necessarily know what the next right thing to do is. We always know the next wrong thing.
Right.
Don't do that thing. That's it. The wrong thing would have been picking on my wife for being selfish and self-centered. That would have been my move, right? I'm going to attack her because I'm in pain.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
That wasn't the right move. The right move was, I hear you're frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Her move was, I hear you're in pain. So what's for lunch?
Yeah.
And now the amount of time and energy we spend on being angry at each other is minimized. And it's interesting because I have this conversation all the time, and it relates to my app and my approach to life. The question is, would you rather be right or happy? Right? And I'd rather be happy. So I don't need to be right all the time.
Yeah.
It's great. And I tell my wife and my friends, we have the perfect marriage. And she laughs at me and she scoffs, and my friends laugh at me until they let me explain. And here's the explanation. We love each other the perfect amount. We hate each other the perfect amount. We argue the perfect amount. Right? We spend time away from each other the perfect amount.
Mm-hmm.
That's the essence of happiness. That's the essence of mindfulness for me. Right? Mm-hmm. The essence of mindfulness is to be present, acknowledge defects, and appreciate them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and what you were saying just a little bit back about you guys talking about your vacation, so often, basically, a version of us is coming forward, and it could be frustrated Michael, it could be depressed Justin, and how often do we just want to truly admit that thing we're feeling and have someone just be like, wow, like, thank you, or I get it, or I love you, or just, thanks for admitting that. And then they could say the thing that they're truly feeling, and we'd just be like, yeah, okay, that's all right. And like I feel like we have these huge conversations and arguments, and it's just two people who are in pain, not quite able to convey that to each other.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's such an important point that you just made. Sometimes we're not even looking at each other, talking to each other.
Yeah.
We need to take time, and there's a book by Susan Scott called Fierce Conversations. And she has a phenomenal analogy. And the analogy is this. We're all standing on a beach ball. And everyone's standing on a different color. And so I'm standing on the blue portion of the beach ball, and my wife's standing on the yellow portion of the beach ball. Well, all my problems and all my solutions are blue. And all my wife's problems and wife's solutions are yellow.
Yeah.
When we start talking, no wonder my blue solutions aren't fixing her yellow problems.
Right.
Right? It's my responsibility to understand and be present for her yellow solution and yellow problems. And that's why humility is so important, because I don't need her to see my position. And I'm not saying that all the time, right? Because she could learn from me the same way as I could learn from her.
Yeah.
But when I come in with a I know all mentality, that's when my relationship falls apart. Not only with my marriage, that's when my relationship falls apart with my own self. Right? If I'm not honest with myself, I can't move forward. Right? And so many people say, well, I'm on a diet. Well, if you're on a diet and you're gaining a couple pounds a week, there's probably, like, the definition of diet is probably wrong, right? Or the scope of diet is wrong. We should probably just talk about that. Let's just be honest with yourself first. The rest takes care of itself.
Sure.
The third piece of the app is mindfulness. And the best way I could describe it is your left hand is the emotion or event you're experiencing, and your right hand is your reaction and your response. And if you hold your hands out in front of yourself and you hold them out wide, you could see the distance between your left hand and your right hand. You have to go up an arm, across two shoulders, over your head, down another arm before you react. So many people's hands are touching. They have an emotion. They respond to it.
Yep.
In society today, there are so few situations you run into that require that hair level awareness right. that you need to respond. Right? You get an email that's upsetting. No one's going to die. Right?
Mm-hmm.
No, you get a bill. You might not be able to pay it today. Okay. You're not going to die. The distance you create in between your hands, I measure that as peace.
Right.
The wider your hands, the more peaceful you are. And so for me, visualizing and focusing on that and working throughout the day to write down these events that I experience help me. Help create awareness. Because I'm not even aware that I'm exploding at things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I'm able to visualize that. The final piece are goals. And I believe goal setting should be done at a micro level, not at a macro level. And so for me, the concept of a goal of running a marathon would be a macro goal.
Yeah.
Well, what do you have to do in order to run a marathon? First, you have to be able to stand up without being in excruciating pain. So how about my goal for today is to stand up? And then validate and feel accomplished for standing up. Right? How do you lose weight? And I have this conversation because I talk about food a lot. When I was thin, people would say, oh, well, it doesn't matter if you have X, Y, or Z, you know. I said, well, you want to know how I got to 380 pounds? I got there 1 pound at a time. I didn't get there 180 pounds at a time, right?
Yep.
It's the same with that marathon. How do you lose weight? You lose weight 1 pound at a time. How do you run a marathon? Probably a quarter mile at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And if every day I set a reasonable goal and I determine whether I'm committed to the goal or interested in the goal, I can rewire how I engage with myself and I could overcome my own negative self-talk.
Right.
And so every day, not only do I answer how happy am I fill in my gratitudes, my spiritualities, and my mindfulness. And I then set micro goals like being present, tell my wife I love her, follow my food plan.
Mm-hmm. Right. And when you're not doing all these things, do you notice the old experiences, edginess creeping up?
Absolutely. The days that I look down, so I rarely realize that I'm not feeling good that day. But I typically wake up the next morning, see what I put into the app the previous day because I might feel out of sorts. I'm like, oh man, I didn't fill out the app yesterday.
Right.
You know, and I've had people that use the app that tell me the days they fill in gratitude, spirituality, and mindful events, the happier they report. And the days they don't, they know they feel off.
Yeah.
And the big thing that I want to tell everybody, it literally takes me 2 minutes of time throughout the day to completely rewire and reframe my day.
Yep.
So I'm not asking for a 30-minute commitment and fancy yoga pants in a quiet room with candles and incense. I'm telling you, you could sit in the bathroom on your iPhone or Android and change your entire view and experience of that day.
Yep. Now, I'm curious, do you feel like when it comes back around that you have changed your relationship with rage, with irritability, you know, the energy that's behind those? And you talked about maybe the distance between the hands, more awareness. Do you find that you're able to stay in a pocket of peace or non-action a little bit longer?
So absolutely. I'm not only able to stay in a place of non-action longer, I'm actually sometimes able to stay in a place of non-action until the need for action passes.
Right.
Additionally, sometimes I'm able to remove myself from a situation that I would have otherwise reacted to.
Yeah.
So I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and a wife. And I come home at the end of the day and they all want attention from me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's just too much for me. It's overwhelming. My prefrontal cortex doesn't take in that much emotion that quickly.
Yep.
And sometimes I'm ready to snap.
Hmm.
And now when I feel that, I'm able to, mindfulness has helped me say, I feel I might be ready to snap.
Mm-hmm.
Leave the room.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath. The most cleansing breath you could take is in through your nose, out through your nose. And a common saying, a mantra I've been taught, breathe in the universe, breathe out Michael.
Wow.
And so when you breathe in through your nose, you can have oxygen rush over your pituitary gland and down regulate you. Take you out of that engaged state and put you in a place of decision making, right? I want to move from animalistic to comprehension.
Yep.
And so those things help me down regulate because, if you look at your 5 core emotions in your mind, you only have one positive one being joy, right? Worry, fear, anger, despair. These are negative emotions. So I spend time making sure that I can rewire my brain to do that. And the rewiring of your brain works as effectively as an exercise regime, right? Why do professional sports players practice the same move over and over again? It's so they have muscle memory to repeat that move without thinking about it.
Yep.
Well, what if you look at your brain as a muscle and you're able to say, when I have a trigger, I respond calmly. Trigger, calm, trigger, calm. Eventually, you have a trigger, you don't even know how to respond because it's just second nature to you.
That's great.
And you notice that your trigger list starts to shrink.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say that, don't get me wrong, I am by no way telling you I have solved or fixed anything.
Right.
I take 17 pills a day. I see a psychiatrist every 6 weeks. I see a therapist every week. Mm-hmm. All I'm saying is the tool, a plan for living, fills in and complements all of these other modalities. And during the gaps, it gives me something to do.
Yeah. And
right?
thank you for saying that, because I think sometimes in North America, well, most of the first world, we're obsessed with this before-after story. Just follow this list of things I did, and you'll be like me, which is always happy. And it then makes us feel horrible or shameful, or we're then angry about being angry. We're judging all these things. So it's really good to say that, hey, you know what? Despite all this stuff still comes around to me. I still get full of rage, but knowing that when it comes back around, we can change our reactions to it.
Absolutely. And my own personal story speaks to that. 4 weeks ago, I stopped sleeping. I became irritable, right? My illness, my symptoms were kicking into high gear. And I took a chainsaw out and chainsawed my outdoor garden. And I then went and bought seed. And then I went out every night and watered my seed to replace it with grass. I did that while I was using my app, right? But it didn't mean, I was still learning how to take my emotion and energy and put it into something positive.
Right.
Right? It doesn't mean that I don't forget how to sleep and become manic.
Right.
That's not it at all. It simply means I had my app in 2015 when I was in crisis, and I didn't go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Right? If I could just save myself from that sort of extreme, then great. I've created a tool that can help, manage.
Yeah. And that's, it's a wonderful thing. We sometimes take our own recovery, our own goodness for granted, and we just look at like the current episode compared to either how we were a couple days ago or some imagined baseline of humanity, and we judge the crap out of ourselves when probably if we thought about it long enough, we could be like, wow, you know what? I used to be upset for 18 hours straight, and wow, look at me. It was only 8 hours this time. And there is progress constantly going on in each one of us.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we're kind of coming close to time here. But what I always love to do with everyone is end the show with a quick lightning round of questions, kind of rapid fire style with the first thing you can think of. So you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay. Don't worry. Nothing too bad. All right. So real quick, what are 2 things you're grateful for right at this moment?
My incredible wife and my healthy kids.
Awesome. All right. Now, I know it's not public speaking for you because you're pretty good at that, but what is Michael Weinberger's biggest fear?
I am scared of failing.
And just to expand on that, what would that mean? Because this is kind of getting a little existential, but what does failure look like? What does it mean you have to experience?
That's actually the fear itself. Defining what failure is, right? Is it losing my house? Is it losing my business? Is it dying? Is it not accomplishing something?
Right.
Not understanding what failure is and being scared of it is truly my fear. Like, I wish I had a better sense of what success was and so I could not be afraid of it.
Right.
If that makes sense. I know it's abstract, but I don't know what failure looks like. I don't feel like at this point I can fail, but I'm terrified.
Right. Interesting. Okay, cool. All right. Now pretend you have a crystal ball here. What do you think will be some of the big innovations and breakthroughs when it comes to treating mental health disorders in the future? Or what would you love to see have happen?
So I think the connection of wearable technology is really going to help in the mental health arena. I think helping people become more aware of their physical symptoms and relating those physical symptoms to their own mind are paramount.
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes we're able to feel or experience our the physical side of ourselves before we even realize something emotional is going on.
Right. Yep. I think it would be really cool if there's a little, and I actually think they have some rudimentary apps already where you could just connect it to a spot and it could be like, all right, your reptile brain's going crazy today. Like maybe, this is a day where you don't have any intense conversations with people.
Right.
So I think that would be great. All right. Now, if someone says, Michael, I only have 5 free minutes per day to work on mental health, what's the one thing you tell them to practice during those 5 minutes?
During those 5 minutes, I would practice literally gratitude, a spirituality list, and breathing. And learn how to breathe. Breathe in through your nose, out through your nose or mouth. If you do those 3 things, it could take 2 minutes and reshape your day.
Right. All right. What's the biggest success story you've had with a client through a plan for living or just working with clients over the years?
So I work with someone that started out at 509 pounds. Wow. Over a 6-year period. He's lost 270 pounds and has maintained all of his weight loss. I work with him on a daily basis on, using the app. He lost his weight in the first 2 years and he's kept it off. We focus on gratitude and spirituality, and mindful behaviors. And it's been incredible to watch his journey. Cool.
Now, I'm sure with your connection to spirituality, you'd agree that in some way we're all connected. So do you feel like when you're helping other people and healing them, you're actually healing a part of yourself? You're learning from that?
So I actually find I'm making myself whole when I work with others.
Totally.
Because it's a great thing in a weird way. But A, I'm able to add to my spiritual list by praying for those people I work with.
Yeah.
And B, I'm able to be grateful, not in a arrogant type of way, but I'm able to be grateful for the problems I have. Right? Because I might not always want someone else's problems. When you start to really engage with people and be present, you start to really appreciate your own life.
Right. Cool. Now, if you had it to do all over again, is there anything you'd rewrite from your 39-year story?
No. I actually feel that every hurdle and wall and issue I've overcome helped make me who I am and defines how I see the world.
Yeah.
And I am grateful for my diagnosis and all of the setbacks I've had.
Good for you. Good for you. And last question. What's the best lesson you've learned on your journey so far?
The best lesson I've learned so far is that everything passes.
Yeah.
And that sometimes life is about waiting it out. And I've never been disappointed by waiting it out.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man. With that, we are done. This has been a great conversation. Thank you. So tell people what you have coming up, where they can find more about you, your website, your app, Twitter, all that stuff.
Absolutely. You can find more about me at my website, www.aplanforliving, APLANFORLIVING.com. My email address is mweinberger, MWEINBERGER, @aplanforliving.com. You could also find me on Twitter @aplanforliving, and I'm also on Facebook via A Plan for a Living. We have a lot of new features coming out within the application: medication compliance, food journals. I'm frequently speaking in North America, and those speaking events are up on my website and Facebook site.
Great. And yeah, on a personal level, I want to thank you for the connection. I know your publicist reached out to me, and it felt like really a sort of one of those amazing coincidences from the universe. I had just been going through a really deep low, and a lot of issues were coming up for me, recognizing manic and depressive patterns in my life. And when I got the email, I was really thankful for being able to talk to you and meet someone who really is, like I said, just really brave for sharing a story that really even a part of me is terrified to talk to people about. So thank you for sharing.
Absolutely, Justin. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, man. With that, we're done for the show. Thanks for being on, and have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, Justin.
All right. Bye. Today's episode was really meaningful to me in that Michael is able to share not just the highs, the great moments of his life, the successes, but the lows, the things that maybe were very difficult and uncomfortable. And I know for me, I've found a lot of relief in the last couple of years in just being able to admit to myself and those around me that I do struggle with lows, darkness, depression, sadness, hopelessness, and not just come out when everything is sunshiny and light and amazing. And some things that really stood out from today's episode. One is just the bravery involved in admitting to the world our weaknesses. And it doesn't just have to be something that we hide in the shadows, that we keep in secrecy, that we feel bad about, that we judge ourselves about. These can be things that we start to embrace and bring into the fold. I think Michael said some great things. He said that this too shall pass. The lows are going to pass. We'll get through them. And also, the highs, they're going to pass. I think one of the things that can really cause a lot of suffering is when we latch onto the highs. How good yesterday was, how good 20 years ago was. And we judge our current moment against some perceived or actual or remembered high. And that also is going to pass. I also love that Michael said, "You're worth it." He spoke to everyone out there who's going through their struggles. You're worth it. I want to say that too. Because I know that at my lowest points, I don't always feel great about myself. I don't always feel like I'm worth a whole lot. But guess what? You, just being you, just feeling what you're feeling, just letting the energy of the world come through you, just being you is enough. And you're enough to be here and have a life and keep going. I think it's wonderful that he said that, and that it came from someone who has struggled with a lot of difficulties, has been at rock bottom and gotten through it. So I thank Michael for saying those things. I've been to a lot of these places also, and I couldn't agree more. Finally, I like that Michael touched upon spirituality, and I loved his line that spirituality is the humbling of my soul. Sometimes we have to take a bit of a leap of faith in our life and say that we trust in a bigger picture than what we're experiencing. We trust that there's some sort of bigger plan, something bigger than us, a higher power, and that can give us that faith that you can't explain with numbers, you can't explain with science, but it can give us the faith to get through those difficult moments. So when it gets tough, for anyone out there, whatever it is, realize that it's going to pass, you're worth it, and that there is something bigger than us that we can have faith in to pull us through those tough times. All right. I really want to thank Michael Weinberger for being on the show today. Definitely check him out at aplanforliving.com. Check out his app, A Plan for Living. And yeah, this was a great episode for me. It helped me reveal some difficult parts of myself, and that feels good. So, until next time, everyone, this is Justin Manning reminding you to keep health alive. See ya.